Welcome. This is Randy Packett. I'm the founder and a CEO of Chesapeake Capital Management. We still have people signing on. We have about 40 people signed up. So far, I see about 7, maybe 10 people have joined us. So we're going to wait about 2 to 3 more minutes, and we get this meeting started. In the meantime, just relax and enjoy the webinar that we're going to be covering. You should take about 35 to 40 minutes total. So I'll be back with you in about 2 minutes. Hello, everyone. Welcome again. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about generation planning, but mostly in assets do you have that's been taxed or not taxed before, especially your IRAs, 401ks, 403bs, TSPs, or 457s. Many people will suggest that the taxes on IRAs aren't as bad because the state tax exclusion limits are so high. To some extent, that's true. However, the state taxes that were paid by the dissident created an income tax deduction for the beneficiaries. Since IRA owners are now rarely subject to estate taxes, most beneficiaries don't receive a deduction, making the income tax bite even worse. And as you will see, the IRA value progress throughout your retirement often increases the marginal tax rate the beneficiaries are subject to, especially and I know the tax rates will be going up in the future. So I want to spend some time with you today and covering some important information. So here are the objectives for today's discussion. I plan to demonstrate to you how you can improve your legacy by describing what IRA owners typically do and comparing that to 2 simple but powerful ideas that you can maximize your IRA legacy potential. And as we wrap up our discussion later, we'll reflect back on these objectives to see if we were able to accomplish what we were set out to do. Let's begin by discussing how sources of retirement cash flow have changed over the years. 30 years ago, pensions were still widely available, and most people stayed with a single employer for their entire career, retiring with a solid pension as the flagship component of their retirement cash flow. Next in line was the Social Security, which was never intended to provide a full and lavish retirement. But when combined with the pension plan, it enabled most people to live quite well in retirement relative to their pre-retirement lifestyle. Personal savings were a very small part of the retirement picture back then because people had so much confidence in their employer's pension plan, they didn't feel it was necessary to set aside a lot of their own money. 401k plans and IRAs were in their infancy back in 1970s and early 80s. So there wasn't a structure in place to promote a personal savings. So let's compare that to today. Today, most companies have eliminated their pension plans. Social Security still plays an important role, but it isn't sufficient to provide a retirement lifestyle equivalent to the most investors' pre-retirement lifestyle. However, there's been an explosion of personal owned retirement assets fueled by, as I already mentioned, the 401ks, TSPs, 403bs, and IRAs. Today, investors have become increasingly dependent on their savings to support their retirement, and the bulk of their money is in the 401ks or IRAs. Clearly, the implication of the two sides of this graphic tell a very different story about your retirement planning. It means that 30 years ago, financially secure retirees didn't have to have assets to dispose of when they die. Today, successful investors commonly have lots of assets to dispose of at death. So let's talk a little bit about IRAs and RMDs, required minimum distribution, and the intersections between the two. Most of you already know there's a tax law passed this past year where the IRAs required minimum distribution doesn't have to be pulled out until your age of 72. Prior to the new law, it was 70 and a half. Now you could wait till you're 72 to pull the money out. So the year that you turn 72, you must take the required minimum distributions. This graph illustrates IRA RMDs as a percentage of the IRA account value. This is the reason that IRAs reach a peak value and then decline, because the RMD distribution amount coming out eventually becomes larger than the annual earnings going in. As you can see, as I'm sharing with you the graph, it starts around 3.6%, and when you get to the late 90s, 12 to 14%. And most people, they decide when they're getting retirement, they forecast that their earnings to be between 6 and 9% range. Whether that number is the right or wrong, most people think that during the investment years, they like to earn between 6 to 9%. This graph shows the actual IRA account balance for the IRA in the previous example. For a 70-year-old single male with $100,000 in IRA earnings, 7% hypothetical return, annual return, his IRA will peak at the value of about $138,000 at the age of 86. After that point, the IRA value begins to decline. Essentially, an IRA will be emptied out at the age of 115 if you're lucky enough to live that long. Again, why does that happen? It's because the interaction between the asset earnings and the amount of required minimum distributions. Finish by noticing that between the age of 75 and 95, the IRA is extremely close to its peak. At what age do most people die? That's right, it's between 75 and 90. Therefore, beneficiaries are commonly inheriting and paying taxes on IRAs at or near their peak value. And how old are the beneficiaries when their parents die? Commonly in their 50s and 60s, which are typically their peak income earning years. So when you add the inherited IRA to their high income, many beneficiaries will pay a high income taxes on the IRAs they inherit. In fact, in many cases, they're paid taxes at a higher rate than their parents were in when they took their deduction. When you think about that, it completely ruins the tax advantage of the tax deductible tax deferral. Assets in qualified plans and other tax advantage plans enjoy a tax deferred growth. However, this favorable tax treatment is for the purpose of encouraging individuals to save for retirement. The revenue code, the Internal Revenue Code, has established for age of 72 as the maximum deferral age before the distribution must begin. These rules prohibit a taxpayer from continuing to indefinitely accrue tax deferred earnings. If the funds are distributed by the required date, a 50% excise tax will be levied on the participant for failing to take out the required minimum distribution. But there's a good news. For those of you who still work beyond the age of 70, now if you're working beyond the age of 72, you could still contribute your money into an IRA account. And because of your age and also the catch-up contribution, you could put away up to $6,500 in IRA. So if you work and if you make up to $13,000, whether it's you or your spouse or together, and you decide to defer that longer, you could mediate your required minimum distribution by taking out whatever that amount is minus the $13,000 that you could put away into future. So that's a little bit of good news that you're able to do. Now let's talk about the IRA transfer. Okay. So what do most people do? Well, because of perceived benefit of tax deferral and the fact that all non-qualified assets are being taxed annually anyway, conventional wisdom often suggests that investors should liquidate their non-qualified assets to support their retirement and leave their IRA assets as the last resort. Many times they're simply asked to reinvest their RMDs back into the portfolio. There's really no clear plan for their IRA. It'll just be whatever it be. To that, I often say, in the absence of a plan, you still have a plan. And let me show you your plan. So what does that plan look like? Typically, the IRA owner and their spouses pass away. The IRA goes to the children. If the children have a financial wisdom, under the old common law, they had a chance that they were able to stretch their IRA inheritance, which used to be a continued distribution into their mid-80s. I already have shared with you that that has changed. There's some tax laws changed this past year, which says you cannot have a lifetime stretch for your IRAs if you're the beneficiaries of it. Any inherited IRA must be taxed within the next 10 years. Some people may stretch that out during the 10. Some people will defer that to a later time and take the whole thing at once. But the bottom line is there's no such thing as a long-term stretch IRAs anymore, if some of you have plan on doing that. So to bring the story to life in a typical example of a client that dies while owning a $500,000 IRA, their children could pay up to 40% in income taxes. That's totaling $200,000, leaving the $300,000 to their kids. Whether the children spend a lump sum or stretched out over the next 10 years, typically the money will be spent before the children die, leaving nothing for the grandchildren. Let me share a story revolving around 3 circles, 2 questions, and a 3-point value proposition. If you could follow this with me, maybe you may want to pull out a piece of paper that you could follow along with the illustrations that I want to go over with you. Let's talk about the 3 circles. Simply draw 3 circles on a piece of paper and write a letter LO in the first circle. In the second circle, write the letter C. And in the third circle, write the letter G. The LO stands for loved ones. And the C stands for charity. And the G stands for, that's right, the G stands for government. Now, cross out the one you would least likely want to give your money to when you're done with it. I'm sure for most of you, you crossed out G, the government. I want to introduce you to several strategies for your IRA that may help create a significant value for you to pass to your loved ones and the charities without you losing control over the money and without losing a significant portion of your wealth to income taxes. I won't be able to cover all the possible strategies today in this webinar, but if you like any of these ideas, please call and make an appointment to see me in the very near future. Because the tax laws are changing, and if you don't take the advantage of what's available now, you may lose a significant amount of your money to the government, and the tax laws are changing. So make the plan today and meet with us if you have any questions or concerns. Let me ask 2 questions. First, if things go the way you have planned, what's going to happen to your IRA or whatever the assets you're focused on? What is your response? I'm sure most of you would answer my kids. So my question is to you is this: why don't you give that money to them right now? But of course, most of your response would be, I can't because we just might need it later on. So you're not going to give your retirement money to your kids yet. Folks, I have been able to help you to keep your IRA in good care, custody, and control, and sometimes even double, triple, even quadruple the value of assets I manage for you without taking any additional investment risk in their portfolio. So let's briefly review 2 IRA wealth transfer strategies that you should consider. First, let's take a look at a typical IRA plan. IRA owner dies, IRA goes to the children. And when we put numbers into the plan, it looks like this. Let's say the IRA, you have a $500,000, and then you pass away. After taxes, the children will get about $300,000. Sometimes it could be even higher. And most of the times, because now there's no stretch IRA, they will spend the money because they have to, by law, distribute that money out to them in the next 10 years. So as I already mentioned before, if you're in the 80s and 90s and you pass on, the money will go to your kids who may be in the 50s and 60s, but they have to spend that money within the next 10 years. So if you're 50, by the time you turn 60, you'll be gone. Well, at least you pay a huge amount of taxes. If you're 60, by 70, same thing will happen. So the grandchildren will be left out, having the benefit of you saving your money into a retirement plan. Well, one of the areas that we're going to look at today is a life insurance solution that could change the way you think about the IRA legacy. Keep an open mind because this may really help you for those of you who are healthy and able to qualify for it. But again, there are other strategies if this doesn't fit you. So let me kind of go over this. Using the life insurance approach, you simply use a portion of your unneeded RMDs to purchase a life insurance. A lot of my clients, a lot of you, always tell me, why do I have to ever take out the RMDs? I don't even need it. I'm living off from my Social Security. I'm living off from my Social Security and pension or some other assets that you may have. So a lot of times that you're upset that you have to take the RMDs and pay taxes on it. And I'm talking about unneeded RMDs. Well, how much life insurance should you buy? In the first solution, we will project the future value of the IRA, allowing us to estimate the amount of tax the children will have to pay on the IRAs when they inherit it. We'll purchase a life insurance death benefit equal to that projected tax amount. It's almost like hiring a life insurance company to pay the taxes for you, and the fee for hiring them is a premium. Now, obviously, you're not officially hiring the life insurance company to pay the income taxes, but the beneficiaries can use the income tax-free life insurance death benefits to pay the taxes due on your IRA inheritance. That way, the beneficiaries don't need to withdraw any money from your IRA or from their other investment assets to pay the taxes. Their existing portfolios remain entirely intact, and so does their IRA inheritance that they got from you. As a result, your beneficiaries, your kids, will end up with the entire value of the IRA, and they can enjoy your inheritance with the greater value. As you can see, this is a very simple approach. Only 3 steps that you need to take. 1, forecast the future IRA value. 2, calculate the estimated income taxes the beneficiary will owe when they inherit the IRA, and purchase the life insurance and name the children as the beneficiaries. And here's the graph showing you exactly that. Well, let's put the numbers to work. Let's say you have RMDs from a $500,000 IRA to purchase the $200,000 survivorship universal life policy. When you and your spouse die, the children will inherit the IRA. They also will inherit the $200,000 life insurance death benefit, which are paid to them income tax free. The children can use the life insurance death benefit to pay the $200,000 of taxes they owe inheriting the IRA. Now, without being reduced by the burden of taxes, the children would keep the entire $500,000 IRA, increasing their inheritance by over 65% compared to the children's originally expected after-tax inheritance of $300,000. In fact, if they use the life insurance to pay the income taxes on their IRA, they would have choices. One, they could liquidate the IRA and invest the entire $500,000 into their investment portfolio, where they would have a complete liquidity. I know some of the younger people don't like the idea of putting money into any type of fixed annuities that may have a 10, 12, 15-year maturity date. So if you have those issues, you could just put them into assets that we could help you manage, and there'll be complete liquidity there. And second, under the current law, they could stretch their IRA for only 10 years, continuing tax deferral and using the life insurance to pay the income taxes, or convert the entire IRA to Roth IRA. I know I'm not going to be speaking a lot about the Roth IRA conversion right now today, but certainly if you're young enough, that may be even better idea of putting your IRAs going to your kids as tax-free. And I have used that many times. I have done it on my own, and I'm sure that you know the benefits of it. But if you really don't know about the conversion opportunity with IRAs, please let us know so we could help you with it. Either way, the beneficiaries are significantly further ahead financially than they were in the absence of tax offset plans. How do you actually eliminate the taxes on an IRA inheritance? You simply need to involve a charity. In this charitable contribution strategy, we begin with the same approach as the first one. However, to make this work, we don't buy life insurance equal to the forecasted taxes. We buy life insurance equal to the forecasted value of an IRA. Now, instead of having children inherited fully taxable IRAs, they inherit the income tax-free death benefit of the life insurance policy. This strategy only typically requires a portion of the unneeded RMDs to pay the life insurance premiums, and the proportion of the premiums to the RMDs becomes smaller and smaller as they get older and RMDs get larger. Then once the life insurance is in place for the children to inherit income tax-free, we still have a fully taxable IRA to deal with. What can we do with the IRA so that these are not taxed on the inheritance? That's right, we can give the whole IRA to your favorite charity. When done properly, giving to an IRA, which qualified as a 501c3 charitable organization, the charity will pay no income tax on your IRA when they inherit it. There you go. No taxes to your children because of the tax-free life insurance, and no tax to the charity to the charitable deduction. So you've tripled or more the after-tax value of your total inheritance created by your IRA. So 3 easy steps on this is to estimate the future value of your IRA at the time the children will inherit it, purchase the life insurance policy equal to the forecasted IRA value, and third, change the IRA beneficiary through a charity of your choice. Simple, but effective. Here are some numbers that bring this scenario to life. Starting with the same $500,000 IRA, we used the RMDs to purchase $500,000 survivorship life insurance policy. But this time, instead of using the death benefits to pay taxes, the $500,000 death benefit goes to the children income tax free. Then the charity becomes the beneficiary of the $500,000 IRA. If done properly, and the charity is again qualified as a 501c3 organization, their inheritance of $500,000 is also income tax free. Add it all up, the combined legacy is now $1 million, which is more than triple the children's original after-tax legacy of just $300,000. I think that's pretty powerful. Let's see. Look at the comparison on the net after-tax legacies when you stack the three strategies next to each other. In the current plan, we're forecasting that the kids will only net out $300,000 after tax from their $500,000 IRA. In the tax offset strategy, which is the second one, we're forecasting that the kids can pay all of their taxes on their IRA inheritance and still net out $500,000. In the third one, in the tax elimination strategy, the combination of life insurance to the children and the giving the IRA to the charity creates a combined total after-tax IRA legacy of $1 million. You have the opportunity to choose which of these strategies you like the best. Do you recall our 3-point value proposition? Earlier, we said to you, I wanted to talk to you about a specific strategy for your IRA that can, 1, keep your IRA in your care, custody, and control for the rest of your life in case you need it. 2, potentially double, triple, or perhaps even quadruple the value of the assets for your beneficiaries. And 3, do all of this while taking no additional investment risk in your portfolio. If you'd like to see how an idea like that might work for you, well, one question that sometimes come up is whether or not to use an ILIT. ILIT is an irrevocable life insurance trust versus owning the policy personally. Years ago, when the state tax exclusion amount were much lower, life insurance was commonly owned by irrevocable or irrevocable life insurance trust to keep the death benefit out of the investor's taxable estate for calculating estate taxes. In today's world, which is state tax exclusion limits exceeds $11,700,000 for a single and couples $23 million, the need for ILIT may have been lessened. Why? Because the investors can often include the life insurance death benefit as part of their taxable estate and still be far below the amount that would trigger their estate taxes. Naturally, for additional financial control and for larger estates, using an ILIT may be practical, but for most of us, we don't need to worry about that. All right, so if you work with us, we can help you to keep your IRAs in your care, custody, and control. We can help you to potentially double, triple, or quadruple the value of the beneficiaries, and we can help you to take no additional investment risk in your portfolio. So with that, we are about 30 minutes in. If you had any questions, you certainly could send that to us so we could answer that. Because of the time today, we will be answering back to you either by email, text, or a phone call. So I hope you enjoy our webinar today. And there are a few things that you could do to summarize what we talked about with any of your assets. Either you can spend all your money in your assets while you're living, or you can start gifting the money, $15,000 per person for as long as you want until you die. That means it will be out of your estate. Or you could lend the money to your family members and let them pay you an interest to live. I don't usually recommend that, but that's certainly is your choice. Or you may create a business and you may pay wages to your family. And then lastly, you could create a life estate deed for your house so that your house will be owned by your kids up front. You have a right to live there as long as you can. But when you're gone, the house is already owned by your kids. So there are many, many different strategies that you could work with, including the Roth IRA, which we didn't really cover today. But if you have any questions, or if you'd like to look more into this, please give us a call to make an appointment. And please look forward to our future webinars that we'll be having in the next few months. I want to thank you again for being with us today. I hope that you enjoy the upcoming weekend. I understand the weather's going to be nice and warm, and stay healthy. Thank you again. Bye-bye.